Okay, welcome everybody. This is a voting meeting for the Prescott City Council. Today is Tuesday, March 22nd. Do we have any introductions or announcements today?
Well, of course we do, Mayor. Heads up, everyone. It's the 20th anniversary of the Indian Fire. I don't know how many of you were around at that time, but that was in May of 2002. So, with that in mind, wildfire season is just around the corner, so we as citizens should all take responsibility for making our property fire-wise. Prescott Area Wildland Urban Interface Commission can be a great resource of knowledge and information on how to become fire-wise. To learn more, go to yavapaifirewise.org. And the City of Prescott is helping by offering a free brush drop-off event. We don't want you to brush off. For residential trash customers. The event will run every Saturday from 8 to 4 throughout the month of April, beginning April 2nd. Here are some tips if you plan to participate. Be sure and bring proof of City of Prescott residency. Do not place trash in the brush debris. And please remember to cover and contain your load when transporting. And the commercial haulers will be required to pay the usual standard rate for disposing of brush and vegetation. For more information, call the Solid Waste Division at 928-777-1116. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll have an invocation from Reverend Richard Rogers in the Unity Church of Prescott, and then it'll be followed by a Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you. So we come together to ask our Heavenly Father's blessing upon this day, upon this meeting, about our city and our nation. We give thanks for that presence and power of God that guides us and directs us in all things. And we know that from the highest level of good, as we open our minds and hearts to one another, that all problems can be overcome. That we have the power within us for creative solutions to every need. So today we give thanks for all the good that we have, all the blessings, all the richness, and a community that can work together to solve all of our issues. So we say thank you, God, and so it is. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Reverend. Ladies and gentlemen, will you please join me in pledging allegiance to our great republic and the flag that represents it?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So I'm going to begin the proclamations with
Mayor.
a proclamation.
Mayor, sorry, I need to do a roll call before you proceed.
Well, let's do a roll call then of our council.
Mayor Good.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Rusing.
Here.
Councilwoman Hall. Here. Councilman Montoya.
Here.
Councilman Moore.
Here.
Councilman Sischka.
Here.
And Councilman Tenney.
Yes.
All are present.
Very good. So I know we have a number of representatives and veterans from Vietnam, whether they served in combat or their Vietnam era. So I would ask you to please step forward as I read this proclamation. Come on up. I'm going to spread out a little bit. We got a lot of my fellow veterans here in attendance today. So this is a proclamation announcing a National Vietnam War Veterans Day, which is recognized every year on March 29th. Whereas by an act of Congress signed into law by President Donald J. Trump on March 28th, 2017, one of the first acts that he was able to complete and sign into law as as our president on that date. The first federal statute to specifically honor Vietnam veterans created National Vietnam War Veterans Day to be observed on March 29th of each year. And whereas on March 29th, 1973, the last American combat troops withdrew from South Vietnam after more than 9 million men and women served in the U.S. military services during the Vietnam War era, and whereas 58,724 men and women died serving during the war in Vietnam, and whereas due to the divisive nature of the Vietnam War, few remaining veterans were properly welcomed home and honored for their service and sacrifice to the founding ideals of our nation and their efforts to protect and defend innocent civilians in Vietnam. Whereas the city of Prescott prides itself in valuing its many military veteran residents, and whereas it's only right and proper that the city of Prescott and its residents recognize and honor all of its Vietnam War veterans for their service and sacrifice. Now, therefore, I, Phil Good, Mayor of the City of Prescott, on behalf of the Prescott City Council, does hereby encourage all veterans to display the flag of the United States and to honor Vietnam War veterans. And I do hereby acknowledge March 29, 2022 as National Vietnam War Veterans Day. So I think this is an opportunity that we have as a city and as our residents to say, hey, welcome home. To all of our Vietnam veteran residents in this city and all of our Vietnam veterans throughout the nation. So would you guys please turn around and allow our residents to say welcome home. Thanks, Danny. Thanks, Terry. Thanks, Marty.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. This guy right here served on a fire base in Vietnam at the same time I was there. He was up on the top shooting artillery, and I was down in a bunker making sure that the enemy kept him safe, and he was able to deliver fire to our other units in the field. Thank you.
Next, we have National Service Recognition Day, April 5th. And Councilman Moore is going to present that.
That is a hard act to follow. Do we have any representatives here today from AmeriCorps? I invite you to come forward, please. Thank you. It is my privilege today to read this proclamation, National Service Recognition Day. Whereas service to others is a hallmark of the American character and central to how we meet our challenges, and whereas the nation's cities, towns, and counties are increasingly turning to national service and volunteerism as a cost-effective strategy to meet their needs, and whereas AmeriCorps participants address the most pressing challenges facing our communities, from educating students for the jobs of the 21st century, to fighting the pandemic, to responding to natural disasters, to supporting veterans and military families, And whereas AmeriCorps and Senior Corps participants serve in more than 45,000 locations across the country, bolstering the civic, neighborhood, and faith-based organizations that are so vital to our economic and social well-being. And whereas National Service represents a unique public-private partnership that invests in community solutions and leverages non-federal resources to strengthen community, impact, and increase the return on taxpayer dollars. And whereas National Service participants demonstrate commitment, dedication, and patriotism by making an extensive commitment to service, a commitment that remains with them in their future endeavors. And whereas AmeriCorps shares a priority with local leaders nationwide to engage citizens, improve lives, and strengthen communities, and is joining with the National League of Cities, the National Association of Counties, Cities of Service, and local leaders across the country for National Service Recognition Day on April 5th, 2022. Now, therefore, Phil Good, Mayor of the City of Prescott, does hereby proclaim April 5th, 2022 as National Service Recognition Day and encourages residents to recognize the positive impact of national service in our community, to thank those who serve, and to find ways to give back to their communities. Thank you very much. I'd like to present to you this certificate, signed by the mayor. And if you'd like to make any comments, we invite you to speak to the audience and let them know what you're currently working on in our community. Thank you.
So I'll keep this short and simple. Arizona Serve is our local organization that supports AmeriCorps projects throughout Yavapai County, supporting upwards of 50 volunteers right now, who provide necessary manpower for a lot of organizations that you might recognize, like the Community Nature Center, United Way, GEM Environmental, Yavapai College. Is there any other ones you would want to call this?
Prescott College School District.
Prescott College, the Prescott Unified School District, and many, many others. And long story short, because of the community and because of the support you all provide, they're able to work on problems like poverty alleviation, veterans affairs, and any of the other pressing concerns the community has. So on behalf of our organization, we thank you, and on behalf of our volunteers, we thank you. Thank you.
Okay, next we'll have a presentation to the Prescott Citizens Academy graduates. So all you Citizens Academy graduates, you want to step forward and we'll hand out your graduation certificates.
Hi, I'm Amber Fraser with the City Manager's Office. So the City of Prescott hosts a Citizens Academy that serves residents by exposing them to city department and operations. And this program is intended to provide participants with insights on how local government works, promote open line of communication, and offer a clearer understanding of how city services affect the everyday lives of its citizenry. So we just completed our 7th Academy. And so at this time, I'd like to see if Mayor Pro Tem has any comments. If not, we'll move on to giving you guys your certificates.
Thank you and congratulations. We really appreciate you taking the class and learning about your local city government, because out of all the levels of government, it's your local city government that makes the biggest impact on your day-to-day life. And so with that in mind, it's important that you continue to be involved. So I hope to see you at more city council sessions. And I just want to know, how many of you are new to the community? How new?
Fine, new.
Oh, within the last year. Okay, well, that makes you old timers. Okay, well, thank you. And I'm sure Mayor Good would like to say a few things.
Well, I think when I addressed you all at the beginning of the academy, I made the reference that you would probably find it very enlightening to understand how big of a city we are, how many services we provide, and be able to have a better understanding of how the city works. How many people would agree that you've reached that conclusion? Everyone. So I'm just so proud that you decided to go through this academy, and now that you have that understanding, I hope you will continue to volunteer and to work with the city and help our city function. So I can't thank you enough for the time and effort that you spent. Thank you very much.
And I'd like to just add that the next Citizens Academy class starts May 1st?
May 4th.
May 4th. So keep an eye on our website for the application. Thank you.
All right, so I tried to do alphabetical. So John Belzer.
John Balzer?
Yep. Thank you. So, and then afterwards, we'll do a group photo together. So there's your thumb drive. Michael Bateman. So, all right. Shane Eitner.
Shane and Michael probably together.
Probably. Patricia Finn. Nope. All right, Bridget Loden. Let me make sure I give you the right one. All right. Thank you. And then here's your thumb drive. All right, Jill Martin. Donna McCrossan. Thank you. Corbin Ross Muszczynski. I appreciate your patience on that one. Thank you. Prerna O'Hara. Thank you. Deb Pastor. Thank you. I'll do you together. David and, oh, there you are. David and Catherine Phillips. Thank you. There you go. All right, Bill and Sandy Ritter. All right. Let's go. Sandy. Julie Stevenson. Thank you. Thank you. And then Donna and John Tansey. There we go. Donna.
Thank you.
John. Oh, there you go. And I want to say thank you to everybody who participated. Thank you to our city staff for all of the hard work. I know it takes a lot of work to put this on, but it is beyond beneficial to everybody. So I appreciate everybody and their time and the effort that was put in on all ends. So, all right. Thank you. So we'll do a group picture. Come on up.
You're going to need a wide angle lens.
I know. And we're all going to smile at John in the back there.
Yeah, John took it back. So.
Amber, the group has something for you too.
Oh,
Just a little something to thank you for all your efforts. Everything you've done for us.
Thank you.
I appreciate that.
I stepped on your toe. I think it's okay. It's a cord. Should we squat?
should we?
Oh, that's right. You guys are up there.
Come over here.
Yeah, come.
Here you go.
We got everybody? Mm-hmm.
Thank you all so much.
Sit here for a little bit.
Okay.
Let's go sit on that.
All right, we'll now move on to the open call to the public. City Clerk?
City of Prescott welcomes public engagement, and residents may comment and address council on matters that are not included on the posted agenda during the open call to the public. If you wish to speak, please complete a green speaker card and submit it to me prior to the meeting being convened. As a reminder, speakers are limited to 4 minutes of time, and the call to the public will be limited to 40 minutes in total. I do not have any green comment cards at this time. Is there anyone that wished to speak on something that's not on the posted agenda, ma'am? I have your speaker card for the item that you wanted to talk on. Looks like we don't have anybody, Mayor.
All right, very well.
We solved all the problems.
Yeah, I hope that you're right, Mayor Pro Tem, whether we have no more problems in the city that anybody's willing to talk to us about. So at that point, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Do we have anybody that wants to pull an item?
I would like to pull item A on the minutes. I have a correction on page 15 of the minutes.
All right, we'll pull item A for consideration. Any other items? All right, I'll entertain a motion for the following consent items.
Mayor, I move that we move to approve consent agenda items 9B through 9F.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor, please vote.
Passes 7-0.
All right, Mayor Pro Tem, item 9A.
Oh, I just have a little correction in the middle of the page where it says Mayor Pro Tem Rusing. She feels water service area language should also be included along with water within the water service area, along with the city limits. So we should have both the water service area and the city limits included in the language rather
Mayor Pro Tem
than...
Rusing, which minutes are you talking about? There are 3 on the item.
Oh, on the study session.
On which page?
15.
15 of the packet or 15 of the minutes?
15, well, it's page 7 of the minutes.
Thank you.
15 on the packet.
Is that it?
Yes,
Okay, we can make those changes.
thank you.
There'll still need to be a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
Mayor, I move to approve the minutes as amended.
Second.
Motion and second, please vote.
Passes 7-0.
All right, we'll move on to item 10, liquor license.
Public hearing and consideration for a new Series 10 beer and wine store liquor license application from Andrea Dalman Lakowski, applicant for Natural Grocers, location 1470 Gail Gardner Way. The application fees have been paid. The signs have been posted for the required 20 days. Staff has reviewed the applications and determined that they are in compliance and no public comments have been received. And I do believe that our applicant's representative is on Zoom. Amy, if you wanted to address council, you may go ahead and do so now.
Oh, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm just here if you guys have any questions.
Well, other than the fact that I go to Natural Grocers pretty regularly, it's nice to know that you have some expanded merchandise for your customers.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, they're just going to use it, the Series 10, because there's, they have other Series 10 licenses in Arizona, so they're just using the beer and wine as an incident to the other products that they sell, and all the employees are trained.
Very good. Any other, any comments from anyone on the council? All right, then I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Have a motion and a second, please vote.
Passes 7-0.
Mayor, I move to approve for liquor license number 179726 for a new Series 10 beer and wine store liquor license for Natural Grocers, location 1470 Gil Gardner Way.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Passes 7-0.
Very good. Congratulations, and we'll look forward to those additional products available at Natural Grocers.
Oh, perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Amy.
All right, we'll move on to the regular agenda. Item A is a legislative update.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Tyler Goodman with the City Manager's Office. Let me pull up our legislative update. Wow, that was like magic. We'll dive right into the Arizona Water Authority. We talked at length about this 2 weeks ago. This is a strike everything bill to Senate Bill 1611. It would create a new statewide entity to identify and develop long-term water sources. Honestly, not a lot has changed in the last 2 weeks. The bill has been assigned to the Natural Resources, Energy, and Water Committee in the Senate, but it has not been heard. It's not on any agenda yet. I spoke with Barry Aarons, and honestly, there is so much to figure out with this bill. It sounds like there might be a special session in the future to deal with it. That's the update we have for now, and not much other than that has changed. So unless there's any questions on that, I'll move on to the Arizona state income tax. Those on the council last year during the session will remember that the legislature approved almost a $2 billion tax cut, an income tax cut, that would ultimately bring, or it would do so by bringing Arizona to a flat tax system at 2.5%, and that was to be done by 2025. The cut has been blocked by a voter referendum and is set to be on the ballot for this fall. The legislature is now considering repealing that, what they finished last year, to avoid it going to the ballot. If it was approved on the ballot, it would be placed in the state's constitution, and there's some concerns with that. So the new proposal, and nothing official has been released, this is kind of just hearsay and what we've gathered so far, but the new proposal may call for the tax cuts to begin earlier, starting in next calendar year in 2023, with that implementation of the flat tax of 2.5%. The urban revenue sharing was the biggest deal that we dealt with last year. We tried to figure out how cities could remain or held harmless, so to speak, so that our state shared revenues from that portion would not be affected. We did achieve the protected status, you could say, by increasing the share from 15% to 18% that comes to cities and towns. And what we're hearing thus far is even if this new proposal came through, that percentage would remain the same, and it would even be moved up to begin sooner. So we would really be held harmless, I guess you could say. Again, there's nothing official on that yet, but that's kind of what's being discussed right now. Most of these bills we've covered at length, so I won't spend too much time, but ambulance services, it passed the House. It's on a Senate committee tomorrow. Senate Bill 1082, the ASRS, the prepayment bill, that would help us. That passed the Senate, and it's also on its House committee tomorrow. The drop bills, there has been some changes here. On 1286, the PSPRS drop plan from Senator Livingston, there is, it is going to be on an agenda tomorrow, or 1268, excuse me. But there is an amendment that's being sought, potentially so that the additional 2 years, extending it those extra 2 years, the money placed or derived from that would go into a defined contribution plan instead of a defined benefit plan. The goal is to not affect the funded status of the plan. So they're trying to find ways and means that would allow that to happen. And then House Bill 2337, that has now been used as a strike everything bill. So the content is no longer viable, and it's being replaced with a bill regarding affordable housing. The language of that I have not seen yet. I don't know if it's been released. It wasn't as of yesterday. House Concurrent Resolution 2031, this is a newer one. Employee benefits, compensation, and statewide preemption. Subject to voter approval in this year's elections, it would constitutionally declare that the regulation of employee benefits is of statewide concern. And that includes all those things listed there: fringe benefits, welfare benefits, sick and vacation pay, severance pay, et cetera. Obviously, that takes away from our local ability to control those things. We don't like that. And so the league is opposed to that. We are opposed to it as well. It did pass the House by a slim margin. and it's agendized on a Senate agenda in the Commerce Committee for tomorrow. We'll be keeping an eye on that.
May I ask a question? Is that subject to public employees or public and private, or do they make a distinction?
That is the clarification that the league is trying to receive. Right now, the concern is that it would include public. And so it's either not clear or that is the intention that's maybe not being stated clearly enough. Senate Bill 1581, this has to do with the housing rights and homelessness and camping. We discussed this last week more. It did pass out of appropriations, and there is an amendment on the table that would make it so that if cities, basically the premise of the bill is the Department of Housing would allow for grant funding. If cities took that grant funding, they'd have to enforce anti-camping ordinances, right? The amendment on the table is that we wouldn't have to enforce anti-camping or anti-sleeping ordinances in public. We would simply have to reduce the public camping or sleeping by 80%. I don't know how you measure that or follow up on that. But that is the amendment, and that amendment was just posted today, I think in the last couple hours. So it has not been heard. So there's still a lot of moving pieces. The bill, you don't have to take the money. If you're a city, you don't have to take the grant money. But the concern was in the future that might change. They might force cities to take the money and also enforce anti-camping ordinances. 2674, this is the zoning by right housing. This is the one that changed it to a study committee, changed it from a really bad bill. And now it's okay. They're going to do a study committee on it, pass the House, and it's going to be heard in its Senate committee tomorrow. Vacation rentals, all but one have really fallen off the map. The only one left is 1168, which allows local governments to require an owner to maintain liability insurance. And that is on its House committee today. State law violations 2276 would expand Senate Bill 1487 and the claims that could come against cities and towns. It passed out of its committee, which not much has changed in 2 weeks, and it's still awaiting to hear from the House as a whole. It hasn't done so yet. And guns in public buildings, again, it's passed the House. That's not new news. And it passed its Senate committee, and it's still awaiting for Senate floor action. And the last one on the list there, 1275, that bill was signed by the governor, and that helps us enforce fireworks ordinances to not allow them on random nights throughout the year, except for a couple holidays. One thing I need to bring up to the council, we just learned about this late last night. This is Senate Bill. It's a strike everything bill, of course, at this point in the legislative session. Senate Bill 1116. It would make it so that cities could no longer levy residential rental tax. This would be a huge hit to cities and towns and to us as well, about $2.4 million is what I've heard from Mr. Woodfill. And I've already talked to Barry. We're already signing in as opposed. The league is all over it. They're signing in as opposed and trying to get an answer as to why this is coming up so late in the session. And of course, the really severe impacts it would have on services that we give every single day, police, fire, everything that you can think of. So we are actively working against that one. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
So that's Senate Bill 1116, is that right?
That is right.
And where does it stand in the process right now?
It is in committee, and I believe it's either in committee, I think it's tomorrow. It's assigned to a committee tomorrow. Ways and Means, thank you.
Ways and Means?
Yes.
So is this the first committee assignment for this bill?
It is, I'll need to check on that. I'm not sure as far where it is in the process. There is that deadline, though. At the end of this week, bills are supposed to be heard in their opposing chambers, right?
Right.
So it is very possible that bill's history, and maybe, Mark, you know off the top of your head, if it's been heard in the House yet.
No, it's just to strike everything. So
Yeah. We'll need to check where it is in its legislative process, where it's made it.
Well, it's kind of disturbing a bill of that magnitude showing up this late and have such an impact on not only our city, but almost every other city. The strange machinations down in the legislature continue, don't they?
They do.
Any other questions, concerns? Well, thank you, Tyler. Keep an eye on this stuff.
Yeah, I
Boy,
will.
I tell you, it moves fast, doesn't it?
It does. Thank you.
Okay, now we're moving to regular agenda item B.
Discussion and possible action regarding requests for naming of the Prescott Centennial Center. And that's me. Just as a recap, Council conducted study sessions on February 22nd and March 8th regarding requests and applications received for the naming of the Prescott Centennial Center. We've received applications requesting the facility be named after Major Frank Schiel Jr., as well as former Mayor Marlon Kirkendall. These applications have been posted on the city website, and all received public comments have been shared with the council. At the March 8th study session, council indicated that they would like to see an option for a facility at or more closely associated with the airport be available for naming in honor of Major Schiel. Since that time, Airport Director Robin Sabata has been in contact with applicants, particularly Miss Betty, for a naming of a future access road to the Safe Center at Prescott Regional Airport in honor of Major Schiel. Additionally, since that time, staff received an application and request for the naming of the Centennial Center after Morris Goldwater. That has been forwarded to the mayor, as was the process for all of the previous applications. It was just recently received a letter from a surviving family member with regard to that application. And we would like to point out that the Upper and Lower Goldwater Lakes are both named in Morris's honor. However, staff has discussed with the mayor potential for increased signage in the areas if that is the will of the council. As a recap, total number of applications received for Major Schiel are 48, and for Mr. Kirkendall, 144. As I indicated, staff has been receiving public comment related to the naming of the Centennial Center since the February 22nd council meetings, and those have been forwarded to council and reviewed. A total of 19 public comments have been received, and I'm going to summarize. 2 of those applications requested that plaques simply be put at the Centennial Center and the name not be changed. 7 of those comments were a request that the building be named for Major Schiel. 6 of those were a do-nothing request and keep the name the same, and 4 of them were a request to name the facility after Mayor Kirkendall. And that's all I have.
Well, thank you very much. Again, I want to reemphasize the fact that this whole policy naming process was originally designed by the last council with the intention, I believe, at the time to make sure that if naming requests did come forward, they would be able to be considered in a reasonable and deliberative way to avoid conflict within different groups who wanted to have naming rights to a particular building or location or a street or whatever. And as I mentioned the last time we considered this, it seems like we've created more controversy than we had at the beginning. And I guess it's somewhat disturbing that the people who decided to create this policy are no longer here to deal with the consequences. So with that being said, we as a council can either decide to continue to use this policy. We could alter the policy. We could vote to eliminate the policy. We have a lot of options. But we are, at this point, as far as I understand, the group that wants to continue the request for naming of the Centennial Center for Major Schiel has met the standards for their application, for finding a family member that would allow this, and also having the 30-day public comment period. I'm not sure if the Kirkendall group has met the same standard. Are they at the 30-day period too?
So the application, the February 22nd council meeting study session, I should specify, was specifically to discuss the applications that were received for major shale. At that time, because staff received a number of applications following publication and posting of the February 22nd agenda for Mayor Kirkendall, that was discussed as well. Staff was directed at that time to post and publish all of the applications for both parties, which we did. So since the February 22nd council meeting study session, we have received comment and applications have been posted for both names.
So both applicants now meet the necessary standards that we have for this policy. So at this point, I'm kind of open for discussions about where and how we want to proceed. So Council Mayor Pro Tem Rusing.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I'd like to say that I support having our naming policy, and one of the main criteria is that it gives the public a chance to weigh in on naming of our public buildings and public-owned property. So it promotes transparency and public input. And concerning the agenda item today, I would like to have two options to be voted on, either keeping the Centennial Center name or changing it to Marlin's.
Well, if we do not take any action, it will remain the way it's named.
Okay.
So really, we're only here to consider whether we will rename the Centennial Center for either Marlin Kirkendall or Major Shields. But my understanding is the group that was advocating for Major Shield is willing to maybe wait until an appropriate aviation-related facility or even a road that is being proposed to go to this safe, forget what the acronym is for SAFE, but it's a training facility for pilot training out at the airport. And I understand that there's a willingness to maybe delay their request and have the naming for Frank Shield go to that road or that facility out there. So am I correct on that? Is there any representative here from the Shield group?
Betty is here. Betty, why don't you come up?
You should have hit him harder.
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Well,
So Betty, what's your, have you made a decision about potentially deferring this request and being able to direct it towards an aviation-related road or a building? Should that be available in the next few years?
I think she said 3 years.
Go ahead and speak in there into the
microphone,
microphone for the record.
I actually, I wish I had known that you were going to say this, so we'd be ready to say something. I'm going to read a quote from Theodore Roosevelt. It's for me. Nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And I have certainly cared for 4.5 years. But I was happy to hear that Robin Savada would like to have something done for Major Shield. It's 80 years since his death, and here we stand here today. And I wish I could have run this by his nephew, because I'm taking responsibility, I guess. So there's no more I can say to you people about Major Shield. I actually bought a plaque today, and it's in my pocketbook, so I can't read it. I never told you that he was a Boy Scout here, and they gave him a little plaque, and it's really nice. I should go back and get it so I could read it. Whatever you people decide, I thought it was going to be left up to the decision of the board, how you vote. So, but I'm fine with it, I guess, because I don't think it's going to go the other way anyway. So I'm very happy. I wish there was still something that could be put up somewhere for him. I'd like to see even his portrait up around town or something even closer, because it's going to be great about the airport, but it's a long way off. And but I really appreciate Robin for bringing this up and doing this. And maybe even at the airport, at the main entrance, maybe we can have something so everybody knows who he is. I have plenty of photos. So.
Well, I think it's pretty clear that the council supports recognizing Major Shield in an appropriate location, so that I don't think that's up for dispute. But as far either, I think you can withdraw your application for this building and ask that it be applied to a future aviation-related facility or road, or we would have to make a decision up or down today on the Centennial Center building.
Okay. I have to tell you this because it's kind of funny. I go to that building a lot for the Daughters of the American Revolution. I never considered it as being in the golf course. I've just considered it as a place to go. And just yesterday I asked somebody, where is this golf course? And somebody said, across the street. So I always consider it as a building for, it's got weddings and everything. But I guess I have to. I don't like the idea that you're saying I have to what with my application?
Well, if you wanted to withdraw it for this particular building and then apply it to a future aviation-related building or the road when the facility is actually approved and constructed, then we could reconsider it.
Okay, I guess that's okay.
All right, thank you, Betty.
You're welcome.
Councilman Moore.
Maybe I'm saying this too prematurely, but I do want to express my opinion on this matter. I think that we, as you mentioned, Mayor, that we absolutely want to honor Frank Shield, but, and I think we want to recognize Mayor Kirkendall too, but I think the bigger issue with the naming policy is that we're on a slippery slope if we're trying to rename existing buildings that already have a name. We've seen a lot of that history in our country over the last few years of renaming facilities and renaming schools and erasing history. And in no way do I want to denigrate what we are trying to achieve by recognizing Frank Shield or Mayor Kirkendall, but I think we should not be in the business of renaming facilities because maybe somebody's going to come to us next and say, well, I want to rename the Grace Sparks Activity Center, and I want to rename Granite Creek Park, and I want to rename, and so I think this is a naming policy, not a renaming policy. Here, here.
Thank you, Councilman, and I know that the policy that was established does reference naming or renaming. But again, it's within our purview if we decide that we want to eliminate the reference to renaming and only consider applications to be for a naming of something that isn't already named. So thank you for that. Councilman Shishka.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, originally my concern was that because we have certain parameters within our policy, and one of the parameters concerned me because what I was afraid of was people could possibly come up and tear down a good man. Marlon Kirkendall was a great man, but he wasn't a saint. So I was concerned, and realistically my concerns were allayed in this process because nobody's come forward and said, I didn't like this about Mayor Kirkendall and I didn't like this about Mayor Kirkendall. And so I have no problem naming the building, but I'd like to do it in a way that honors what he wanted, which he was involved in naming it the Centennial Center.
Right.
I would like to see it named the Marlon J. Kirkendall Centennial Center.
That way, we're not really renaming it, we're adding a name. So more names. But that certainly doesn't eliminate the original description because that was named at the 100-year anniversary of the state. Councilwoman Hall.
This may be a procedural question, maybe Sarah can answer it, but is there any way, can Betty just amend her application, and then once they've addressed the new location, then it goes into the 30-day time period? Because I mean, gathering the letters, and a lot of them weren't specific, and maybe you want to speak to this, Betty, but specific about the location as much as specific to the man's, just so she doesn't have to go through the process again of the letter collecting and all of that, where we can keep all of the work that she's done for the naming, and maybe just once the new address is done, restart that 30-day clock and things like that. So it's not necessarily her withdrawing for, a named building in particular, but.
No, city clerk, you have an idea.
So there are a number of ways in which council can handle today's motion. Staff's recommendation intentionally was left rather vague because of that, because it is your discretion how you would like to handle the naming. So what I would suggest, if it is the desire of council to do so, is to make a motion for how you would like to proceed with the naming of the Centennial Center, and also make a motion for this future road to be named at that time for Frank, if the council desires to do so. Then that way there's no withdrawal of an application necessary. They don't have to go through all of those steps, and council could handle it in that manner if you chose to do it that way. You could, as we've discussed already, opt to not to reject both applications, not rename the building. So there are a number of ways that you could handle today's action, and that is fully at the discretion of the seven of you.
Well, that partially clarifies things.
Clear as mud.
Right. Well, I think we're obligated to act on the shield application first. So if we could amend the application to say that we will honor and name a future road after Frank Shields, once that road is identified, planned, and I guess platted, then we would name it after Major Shield.
So moved.
So we've got a motion.
I'd like to add a road in the airport area, maybe, not just any road.
Well, yeah, it would be the road going to the
Safe.
potential new safe training facility.
Okay.
I can hold Councilman Sishka's motion, but you do have additional public comment, Mayor, that you
Okay.
probably want to take before we take any action. Melissa Ruffner?
It won't take very long. By that I mean, don't count on the time it takes me a while. I'm not Elizabeth Ruffner, I am Melissa Ruffner. Council, I've never done this before, and as you know, my mother has come many times, so bear with me. On March 6, 2020, I was going to a meeting, and my hip broke. I had 4 hours emergency surgery, and I'm still recovering. I tell you that to tell you this. I'm only now aware of the naming of the Centennial Center. At the same time, I found a 1964 Courier among my father, Budge Ruffner's things, and it celebrated Prescott's centennial. I came to the council meeting on March 8th to see if I could ask the council to please add Morris Goldwater's name. But I checked in incorrectly, not being Elizabeth Ruffner. I now have filled out proper paperwork and have been given permission from Barry Goldwater Jr. to suggest Morris Goldwater's name. I have been notified that the mayor and council have received these items. I serve on the board of the Western Heritage Center on Whiskey Row, and we now have a large display of our Prescott cowboy pilot, Major Shield, which Betty has seen. And he gave his life for this country in World War II and should be recognized. He should also be remembered at every Veterans Day parade, and this town has wonderful Veterans Day parades. We love our veterans. And his name should also be added to the base of the Vietnam Memorial, where names have been added, including the name of my son-in-law, who was the first casualty from Yavapai County in Iraq. Mayor Kirkendall's name and Mayor Morris Goldwater's name should be placed on the Centennial Center plaque. Mayor Kirkendall's name should be first because he saved that very important building. And Mayor Goldwater's name next at the bottom because he served as mayor of this town for 22 years without pay so we could pave some streets and figure out where the water was coming from. He was also the man of the century for Prescott's Centennial. I began historical walking tours downtown in 1981, and since then have joined a number of organizations, that's why I have all these on, who I would be happy to gather information from and have them send it to email at city clerk, agreeing that both Kirkendall and Goldwater's names should be placed. I will ask for those who choose to email city clerk to show their support. But I do not think you can go wrong by remembering the man who served as our mayor and saved the building, the Centennial building, and also remember the man who was the man of the century for our Centennial. I've never talked 3 minutes in my life. And a lot of you know that.
Thank you, Melissa.
Bill Feldmeyer?
Thank you, and good afternoon, Mayor and Council. As you will remember, I was here 2 weeks ago to speak on behalf of the family and myself and all those that have submitted letters or comments of support to name the Centennial building after our former Mayor, Marlon Kirkendall. Well, today I come back for that purpose, but another one as well. It was one reason last time, two reasons today. The second reason, and I believe is just as important as naming the Centennial building, is to continue with the discussion and making a commitment to honor Major Frank Shield. And you have already discussed doing that, but it doesn't stop me from saying to you that that was important not only to myself, the supporters who have been supporting Marlon's name on that building, and the Kirkendall family as well. I understand Councilman Moore's comments because I've seen the tearing down of history in this country. But in this particular case, I think what we're doing is adding to the history of that building and this community by honoring Marlon and naming it the way that Councilman Shiska has suggested. But one thing I want to do, in addition to supporting these two namings today, is to thank Betty for the fine work that you have done over a number of years in this regard. Because, number one, I didn't know anything about it. Now I've had the honor of meeting this lady and talking to her a number of times over the last couple of weeks, and it is indeed my pleasure. And certainly hers, and I think we need to thank her a great deal for the work that she's done. And I'll close by saying that, assuming things go as the way they are being discussed, that I want to be here the day that a future council discusses the completion of the name of that road in the Major's honor. Thank you all.
Thank you, Bill. Comments?
That's all, Mayor.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor, a motion and a second to, what's the motion again?
I had the motion. I actually did not have a second, so I will need to get that.
Right.
But I had Councilman Sishka's motion as a motion to name the future airport road to the safe facility in honor of Major Frank Schill.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please vote.
Passes 6-1.
You still have a comment?
Yes, I'd like to make a comment to explain my vote. As an elected public official, I think we should be considered as humble servants and let our record be, our record of public service be our legacy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Now we'll move on to the naming of the Centennial Center.
Mayor, I'd like to move that we name the current Centennial Center as Marlon J. Kirkendall Centennial Center.
Was he a D. Kirkendall, Pat?
Is it
D?
D. Kirkendall, I'm sorry. Marlon D. Kirkendall Center.
I'll second.
Centennial
Centennial
Center.
Center. All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Any comments on that one?
No, Mayor.
I think we already got those. All right, please vote.
Passes 4-3.
All right, very well. So it'll be the Marlon D. Kirkendall Centennial Center, and we'll have that road out to the safe facility named after Major Frank Shield. So I appreciate all the people that are involved here. Melissa, maybe we can have a better naming up at the Coldwater Lakes for Morris. And at this point, we'll move on to our next item.
Approval of city contract number 2022-157 with Fan Contracting for the fiscal year 2022 pavement rehabilitation project, Phase 2.
Don't see my map. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. No?
I'm sorry. I didn't
Okay.
know we were voting for Frank. I thought we were voting for something.
There we go.
That's why I didn't know. Sorry, that was an accident. Oh, sorry. I didn't look. Yeah.
That's okay. Yeah. Yep, there you go. Yep, thank you. Sorry, everybody, rookie mistake.
Thanks, Gwen.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Tim Sherwood, Public Works. The item I have for you today is our FY22 pavement rehabilitation project, Phase 2. The project includes various roads in the Ranch Subdivision. I'm trying to figure out how to make the map move a little bit, but first area is here off of San Francisco Drive and Ranch Drive. The next area is in this location here, which is Murphy and Silver Cliff and Swan Lake Circle. Okay, there we go. Thank you, guys. And then up in the southern portion of the ranch will be Brandywine Circle, Rainbow Ridge, Windspurt Circle, Raven Crest, and Eagles Haven Circle. Pavement in this area is exhibiting severe distress cracking, transverse cracking, as well as many areas of failed subgrade. The existing pavement up there is in very poor condition, little to no remaining service life left. The project will utilize a method of milling and replacing the asphalt. We have curb and gutter in this area. Pulverization is not really an option in this location. And all the new asphalt will be replaced with a 4-inch paving section. Project includes curb and gutter and valley gutter improvements where some of the concrete has failed over the last 30 years. Drainage improvements will include adding some scuppers to help with some drainage, in particular at Murphy Way and Lee Boulevard, and also some unsuitable subgrade repairs as necessary. Project was advertised in February. We received 3 bids on March 3rd of this year. The low bidder, apparent low bidder, was Fan Contracting out of Prescott for $1,393,755. Our estimate for this project was $1,422,588. Staff has received written confirmation of the bid from Fan, verification of their license, bonding, references, and past performance of previous projects as completed and deemed satisfactory. We will use the city's standard construction contract for this project, and funding for this project is budgeted and available in the Streets Fund. And with that, I will take any questions you might have.
Councilman Montoya.
Hi, Tim.
Hi.
My question is, previously our previous Public Works Director, Craig Dotseth, when he would come up and talk about some of these projects, would mention some of the stuff we do to extend road life prior to reaching this stage. And I'm just out of curiosity, do you have an idea of what has led us to this path where, what we've done before entirely replacing the road?
Absolutely. I did some research over the last couple days, and 3 of these phases that we're doing right now, Ranch 3, 4, and 5, were constructed in 1987, 1990, and 1991. I had a hard time finding any records of any sort of pavement maintenance that was done over the first 10 or 20 years. There was some chip seal installed in 2008 and 2009 in this area, as well as crack seal that's been installed prior to that chip seal, and then crack seal has been installed since. So we've gotten 30 years plus out of some of these roads up in this subdivision. Now, granted, they're residential, and especially when you do these developer installed roads, the majority of I don't want to say damage, but the majority of the wear and tear happens when the subdivision first is built, because you're getting concrete deliveries, truss deliveries, so on and so forth. Then it becomes kind of a quieter residential area. But these roads have done their job. It's just, there's just not really anything left. Another chip seal is not going to help these roads.
Right. No, and I appreciate it. And part of the reason I'm asking this question is because I think it's important to know from a kind of a public perception. And I think Craig did a really good job on this part of it, is really kind of explain to people, we do a lot to extend the life of roads before we go to this kind of, I don't want to say extreme expense, but it's not a small expense.
Right. And several of the areas up there, Councilman Montoya, we found pavement ranges from 1.25 inches to 3 to 4 inches. So some of the roads up there have got a really thin layer of asphalt on them. It's pretty amazing that they've held up as long as they have.
Yeah, no, I appreciate
and we've
that.
got several subdivisions within the area that, I guess when I moved here in '93 felt new. They're going on 30 years old. So the ranch, Yavapai Hills, et cetera, that are coming up on 30 years of age. We're going to have to get in there and fix some of these roads as well as the other major roads we have to fix as well.
I appreciate that detail, Tim. Thank you.
And just one more thing, too. This is kind of a bigger picture in the ranch. This is like the first step in about a 5-year to 7-year period where we'll work our way kind of from the south end of the subdivision towards the middle, towards Lee Boulevard, and then work our way out. We don't want to improve some of these roads and then have another paving project start driving over the top of them. So we'll improve these roads, work our way towards Lee Boulevard, start on the west side, work back towards Lee, and then Lee Boulevard will probably be one of the last roads we improve as we kind of pull out of this area.
Well, thank you, Tim. I know you and I have talked extensively over the past years about coming up with a better pavement preservation planning. And of course, we spent quite a substantial number of dollars with the measurements for the company that did the boring and came up with all the data that we then put into the new software system to be able to manage our overall road conditions and then decide how best to allocate dollars so that we could bring the overall condition of all of our roads up, at the same time being able to dedicate some dollars to some of those areas that have gotten very little attention. So I think we're moving in that direction now. And I think probably we would want to maybe schedule a study session maybe in the next few months sometimes to be able to bring this whole process back in front of the council so everybody understands how we're managing those dollars and how we're going to allocate them over the next several years.
Yes, sir. We're expecting another update from IMS in the next 3 to 4 weeks. And in that time, we'll have our new director on board. And so I think once we get everybody, we get the new director up and running and stuff like that, and we have the new information, we can absolutely work on scheduling a study session meeting.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And Mayor, I just wanted to state that you had mentioned that at the last meeting, and Gwen and I already spoke, and we have something calendared for later in the summer.
Okay, great. Mayor Pro Tem Rusing.
Thank you. Tim, we have a 1% city sales tax that's dedicated for streets and roads. Is that where this funding is coming from for this project?
Streets Fund, yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, do we have any other comments? Any public comment?
No, Mayor.
I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move to approve city contract number 2022157.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Passes 7-0.
All right, moving on to item 11D.
Approval of 2 items related to on-call planning and environmental services at Prescott Regional Airport as follows. Number 1, approval of city contract number 2022-168 for a 5-year contract with Dibble Engineering. And number 2, approval of city contract number 2022-168A1, an amendment to city contract number 2022-168 to generate updated noise contours.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Robin Sabata, Airport Director. Exciting day. So this is for 2 items relating to the on-call engineering, environmental and planning contract. Essentially what happens is about every 5 years, we have to go back out and go for a professional services agreement. And so we went out for an RSOQ, request for statement of qualifications from interested parties. We did have a successful bidder being Dibble and Associates, and they have many partners that are working with them. I'm here in front of you today to recommend Dibble and their partners, which would include Lee Fisher as well as HMMH and some other additional partners for providing the myriad of services that we'll need. Now, what you're approving is for us to enter into this agreement, but we aren't actually asking for items until we come to you with additional amendments, such as the second item that you're voting on today, which is the First Amendment to that contract. So essentially, we get these planning and environmental services, and there's a high level of expertise required by the planning and on-call consultant. They have to know federal aviation regulations and a lot of technical details, and it's very helpful for me to have them on board. They have to also understand ADOT standards, and the contract doesn't obligate you to have any services other than what we bring to council and that you review in the future. For this selection, we did publish an RSOQ in accordance with FAA procurement methods back on January 23rd and 30th, and we had a very well attended pre-submittal conference on February 4th, but still only one submittal was received. We had a panel that reviewed the applications, including the airport director, the assistant city manager, the capital projects manager, along with 2 industry panelists, including Scottsdale Airport director and Chandler Airport planner. And they looked at it. It was a very good proposal. We've worked with Dibble for many, many years, and we like them. The fact that they brought on Kaufman and Associates is a real bonus. Their expertise is in noise and land use planning, and it's great to have them on board for all the type of planning environmental activities we're going to need in the future. The second item that you're going to be hopefully addressing today will be, and is contingent upon approval of the first motion, would be to enter in a First Amendment to the contract to generate updated noise contours. So around the area, around the airport, we like to be able to take a look at where the noise is being generated and the impact to the folks on the ground. These noise contours will help us to inform and make decisions related to our land use compatibility plan and the potential impact now and eventually in the future on citizens who might be living in the vicinity of the airport. And I'm open to answer any questions if you'd like.
Do you have any comments, any questions of concern? Do you have any public comments?
No, Mayor.
Well, I know we continue to move forward with protecting our airport buffer zone and making sure that we have the long-range planning that we need, including the short-range planning that we need to make sure we maintain our kind of preference with the FAA funding that continues to be made available to us. So we have to make sure that we do our job and follow those recommendations and do the correct preparations to make sure the FAA realizes that we're doing our diligent and best efforts to make sure that we protect the airport, make sure we continue to plan for it appropriately, and make sure that the public at large understands what the consequences of development and building around the airport have to do. So, Mayor Pro Tem Rusing.
Thank you. I just wanted to comment that this runway expansion seems to be moving right along, and this is a very important first step.
Yes, it is. This is part of the environmental scoping process before the future runway extension on the commercial service runway, and it is eligible for reimbursement through federal funding.
Okay, thank you.
I love to hear that. All right, any other comments? I'll entertain a motion here.
Mayor, I move. Oh,
Go ahead, please.
Will you second it for me?
I'll second it.
All right. I feel comfortable then. Mayor, I move that we approve city contract number 2022-168.
Second. Have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Passes 7-0.
Thank you, Dr. Sabata.
Thank you.
I need one more motion.
There's another motion we need to make, right?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Clerk.
All right. Mayor, I move that we approve city contract number 2022-168A1, an amendment of city contract 2022-168.
Second.
All right, a motion and a second. Please vote.
Passes 7-0.
Very good.
Thanks, Robin.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to item 11E.
Approval of city contract number 2022-722 with Cable Solutions Incorporated for IT data center structured cabling. And before Nate gets started, I just wanted to call to council's attention that there was a Scrivener's error on the agenda, and the contract number was actually input as the item number rather than the contract number. So when the motion is made, it will be for the approval of city contract number 2022-163.
Say again.
2022-163.
163. Very good.
Mayor Pro Tem, Council, Nate Keegan with the IT department. Was that my mistake, Sarah? You can blame me if it was. It probably was.
It was. It's okay.
So you can blame me for that one. I've been trying to figure out how to explain this, because IT stuff, it's nuanced, it's nebulous, it's abstract. It doesn't make any sense until it doesn't work, and then suddenly you're like, oh, I get it. I know what IT stuff is. The best thing I could come up with is that if IT stuff was like a box of kittens, right? And we have to store kittens places, and we have to give them food, and we have to give them water, and we have to take care of them. And next thing you know, you have cats and kittens, and then somehow there's puppies in the mix, and I got to stash puppies and kittens over here, and I'm out of room, and I got to put some of them over here. And next thing you know, the IT department spent a lot of time juggling kittens and dogs and bunnies and who knows what, and then you run into this hard, ragged edge where your cooling, your power, your food, the things that all these things need to happen to do what they do runs out. And that happened actually last week at our library. We had an outage on a Tuesday afternoon, nice quiet day. Ragged edge of not enough power happened because we've been stockpiling servers, kittens there, if you will. So what this project does is it takes things that right now are in like 8 different locations and brings them to one location. That one location is going to be more energy efficient. It's purpose-built to house IT stuff, pets, if you will. And it also allows us to free up space in these other buildings where we've been squatting at the library and the dispatch center and in this very building down the lower level, the basement, and brings all that to one place that is built, designed to do what it's doing now, as opposed to like a glorified office downstairs here, kind of slumming it in the library, taking up space there that they could be using. And the hard part with this kind of thing is it's not something we do all the time in IT. So we turned and asked people that do this professionally, what are people doing? What aren't they doing? What makes sense? What's a good investment of money and time? What's not a good investment of money and time? And by doing all that, we were able to reduce this budget from the current fiscal year amount of $1.6 million to $800,000 without compromising the end goals, the time frame. Any of the things we really care about is the destination, not necessarily the journey. So hopefully that makes sense. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions, comments.
Councilman Montoya.
Hi, Nate.
Hey.
How's it going?
Good.
I appreciate you. We corresponded a lot back and forth regarding this project. And I think you got back to me on my last one about some ancillary costs. I guess my first question, I think you may have mistaken what I was getting at. I was asking about redundancies in the system. And I guess it's funny because I'm in the process of hiring or revamping the cybersecurity policy for my investment firm right now. And financial service data is highly regulated, how you manage it, how you know, and so I have to disclose all that stuff. So I actually weirdly have a little bit of background on this right now. So one of the things when I'm talking about redundancies, I guess, is I think about redundancies in physical storage of data as 2 components. The first being, we have a physical location, and if something happens to that physical location, is that information backed up to a cloud component somewhere? I.e., like, if, say, a building burns down where it's housed all this information, do we have some sort of backup to access it?
We do, and the first rule in IT, or at least that we practice here, is you always start from the position of defeat. What's the worst that could happen? Building burns down, all our stuff was in it. What are we going to name all our new servers? What are our new documents going to look like? Because they're all just a pile of carbon now, right?
Sure.
So you start from that principle and you work backwards. You never, ever, ever store all of your backups with your main stuff. That'll be true with this new facility. which is one of our own facilities. It's not like it's a new building or anything like that. It's something IT is already in at Virginia Street. That's not going to change. If anything, you kind of do a shell game of like you have more than the copy of the data and a backup. The smart move is you have 2 backups, 3 different locations. One of those is like at a totally funky esoteric format, so that say a certain country got in to our network and started just encrypting our stuff because they want the ransomware. Well, it's not going to do them any good if our backups aren't accessible to them, right?
So in this case, you're specifically talking about like a denial of service attack.
Worse than that, ransomware.
Ransomware, okay.
You're like, hey, ring, hey, City of Prescott IT, how's it going? All of my documents appear to be in, I think it's Korean right now. Last time I checked, we don't speak Korean to the City of Prescott generally. What might be going on with that? Like, whoa, that sounds like ransomware. There goes our data. There goes our backups. There goes everything that we have as far as data, digital assets pretty much. So you just don't make that possible. So to your point, you don't house everything in one place. There's always multiple places where it's at. And that is to protect you from fire, flooding, natural disaster, any kind of acts of God kind of situations. That's how you deal with that.
Thank you for that explanation. You also sent me this illustration, which I was telling Michael was really appreciated on my part because it's very nice to be able to kind of visualize it a little bit for me. But I guess when I think of a server or a data center like this, my wife used to work for Amazon, so she worked specifically in the Amazon Web Services side of Amazon, which is where they store most of the internet, including components of the CIA, NSA, FBI. So I think of giant racks. Am I visualizing this correctly from your?
A server cabinet looks like a rectangle, right? Made out of aluminum usually, sometimes steel, but usually aluminum. So imagine like a row of these things and another row of them. What is different about like that setup versus like, say, if you went downstairs in the ghost of IT down in the lower level here, is it's just an office. Like if this room was our server room downstairs, you would cool the entire room. Well, if you get enough people in here, it gets really warm, right? But the air conditioner's cranking away trying to keep the whole thing cool all the time. It's not efficient. It goes through air conditioners like crazy. In a proper data center, you only cool the parts that need to be cool. Your equipment sucks in the cold air and it spits out hot air behind it. Well, you don't need to cool that hot air, you just get it out of the room. That can be passive, meaning like you knock a big hole in the wall and let the hot air get out in the wintertime.
And I'm glad you mentioned that because I was curious specifically about what passive systems we'll be using in this data center.
Exactly that, a fan system. So in the wintertime when it's colder outside, you just let that air go outside through physics. And in the summertime, if there's an emergency and the air conditioners, it's plural because they're redundant, fail, same thing. You open up the door, let the hot air get out of there, but you're only cooling a small amount of space, which means you reduce your energy, the size of your air conditioners. That is the difference between a purpose-built thing, which this is, versus kind of always retrofitting and catch where you can. When you catch where you can do it. You can make it work, and we do. But sometimes you run into those harsh edge cases of like, oops, janitor plugged in a vacuum cleaner at a facility, which happened, and it blew out our battery backup system. And it cost us like 8 hours of time to bring those systems back online. Not somebody's fault, just we're in a facility that was never designed to have a bunch of IT stuff, and that weird kind of stuff can happen as you have more and more IT stuff, kittens, puppies, whatever.
One last question for you, Nate. Is there concerns about deprecation in the storage technology that we would be using going forward? I guess what I mean is, let's say that we have X amount of space that we're storing stuff on, and then our need expands, or there's deprecation in our technology that happens over time. I guess what I'm driving at a little bit is, I guess I'm worried that maybe this is a cost, it's a cost saving right now, but could it be a cost increase over time potentially for us?
I don't think so. And I say that because I've been in IT now, not necessarily the city, but I've been in IT as a career for 25 years. So I've seen a lot of change in the IT world. And the IT world is very change driven. So what you see now is you have more space, more storage, faster, all that good stuff. But the physical packaging of these things has gotten smaller and smaller and smaller. And that's not going to change. I think if anything, it's accelerated. And now you have these cloud things where a good example is Microsoft 365 that lives in a Microsoft government data centers somewhere in the United States. All these things are getting smaller. So we projected this out of like, what are we going to need in 5 years? What are we probably going to need in 10 years? Anything beyond that is not really worth speculating on because of the rate of change in technology. It's just might as well just take a magic 8-ball and say, hey, this is what I think, and like that sounds as good as anything else. So for this, it gives us plenty of headway without coming back next year and trying to do it again like, oh, gee whiz, we screwed up, it's too small. But I don't have any good indicators that we're going to be wrong on that. I think it's appropriately sized without wasting money on something we'll never use. But we're also not wasting money on something that's too small just to produce cost and end up back here again and again and again. You get sick of seeing me and you're like, man, why can't you figure this out?
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Rusing.
Thank you. I just have a question. Is there any way this data center can be all virtual and cloud-based, or do we need a actual bricks and mortar one and then have the cloud as the backup?
It's some of both. You're always going to have some physical things. We have a ton of things that are virtual, like I put in the memo, but it used to be that if you wanted to have a server, you had one physical thing and it did one job. If you want two things to do jobs, you need a second thing to do the job and a third thing and a fourth thing. Now you're going to find that you have maybe a 10-to-1 ratio of things that aren't physical but exist that we use every day. Some of those things are in a cloud somewhere else. Some of them are here, which is like an internal cloud. Some of them are physical. So if anything, the mix there has become more heavily physical. In some things like networking, it always has to be physical. But things like servers are highly virtual. The downside there is that because I have maybe 10 workloads on a piece of hardware, if that hardware goes offline, that's 10 different parts of the city now that are affected by that versus my one physical box fell over, doesn't work. And maybe Joe Baines cares about that, but he's the only one that uses it in parks. Now, like last week at the library, that affected police, IT, public works, the library itself, patrons, all in one building. And that makes it much more complicated to get things back up and running because I, as an IT person, don't have to worry about Michael's stuff. It's Michael's stuff, Matt's stuff, Eric's stuff, Clark's, everybody's stuff. That's kind of the way the world's gone, is that you always have to have physical, lots of virtual. Some of the virtual's not even here, but some of it is here. And it's all kind of nebulous until it doesn't work. And then suddenly people are like, whoa, I didn't realize all that stuff was IT stuff. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
You bet.
Very good. Any other further comments? I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve city contract number 2022163.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nate. All right, moving on to item 11F.
Approval of city contract number 2022-166 for third floor improvements at 201 South Montezuma Street, North Montezuma Street, New City Hall with Haley Construction using Yavapai College job order contract number 21-326, job order 22-COP-0007.00.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Tim Mugger, Deputy Director, Recreation Services, also Facilities. So I'm not going to talk about puppies and kittens. I think Nate got us covered there.
That covered, I think.
Yeah. So item before you, just kind of briefly, we bought the two-story building. We know that. We've talked about that. So what's before you is we worked with Gordian Contracting to come up with the bid. It's been a long process since we purchased it of how we're going to design the third floor, what the layout is, where people are going to go, minimal impact. So don't remove this wall if we don't have to, but add walls as we need to. So really kind of thought this out with the architect and then the contractors as well. So what it's come down to, working with Haley through the Gordian contract, is we've come up with this contract amount to get forward. And this covers the entire third floor. Understanding that there's still tenants there, which we're working through on that piece. This should cover the whole entire floor. One thing about this, Haley is a local contractor in Prescott, and they have 11 contractors, all but one is local, and they are still Yavapai County. So we've kept this project local, keeping the money here. I do have representatives from
Haley Construction here if there's questions for them. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Mayor Pro Tem Rusing.
Thank you. I'd like to request that the materials used are all low VOCs, like the carpets, the glue, the cabinets, to decrease formaldehyde and the, I don't know if you call them toxic, but fumes that can irritate people, their allergies.
So on the flooring, it's the flooring we've kind of switched to as a citywide standard. It's not the glue down stuff you typically see anymore. They've actually gone to it's a lock dot. It's about the size of a dime. It's very low, if any, VOCs in it. You had made that comment to us before, so we've taken that into account to really reduce that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councilman Tenney.
Just really quickly for clarification, it's kind of a big price tag on this, just north of $1 million. We got 3 floors that we're ultimately looking at doing. I'm assuming with the city council chambers being in this top floor, it's likely that this will be the most expensive of the tenant improvements that we'll need to do. Is that a reasonable assumption?
It is, but
You're worth every penny.
yeah, I can't sit here and tell you that it's not with the way the economy's going and the price of everything that's going.
Sure.
You are correct. There's a lot more cost to that because of the council chambers and the attention put into that, to the, interior design and that whole 9 yards. So most likely yes, but I don't want to sit here and assure you that that's going to be fact.
Sure. Large public meeting space, though. We're doing more on this floor than we're doing on any other floor. Is that
Yes, absolutely.
reasonable to say? Okay, super. Thank you.
All right, any other comments? In that case, I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move to approve city contract number 2022-166.
Second.
A motion and a second, please vote.
Passes 7-0.
Thanks, Tim. All right, we'll move on to item 11G.
Approval of city contract number 2022-171 for the purchase of a joint police and fire mobile command unit from Quality Vans of Tempe.
Thank you, Sarah. Mayor and Council, John Brambilla, Deputy Chief of Police. You're getting the deputies today, the Deputy Director and the Deputy Fire Chief, so we have our own club, just so you know. It's been a long day, so I won't take up a ton of your time, but the item before you is exciting to us. This has been something that we have been without a mobile command post for approximately 5 years. The one that we did have was a repurposed Class C RV that really did not meet our needs. When we looked at this project over the last 5 years, we've tried a number of different sources for funding. We've tried grant funding, tribal grant funding, and just have not been successful. This is something that we joined with our fire department, because as you can imagine, there are a lot of scenes that we go to together where having joint command in our incident command system is highly important to the things that we do. So this project has really involved a lot of different people, including Justin Hill, who's our Fleet Services Manager, as well as Deputy Chief Knapp, who has had a lot of experience building several of these vehicles. So his input has been extremely valuable to us. We've also included IT in this as well because there will be a component to that. So the item before you today is working off of a Maricopa County contract to build this mobile command post. And I know some of you had an opportunity to come see the example that we brought over from the Yavapai County Sheriff's Office, because that's the one that we've been borrowing when we need one. As you can imagine, not very many of our investigations take place solely in the police department. So being out in the field and having the capabilities that we need and the resources that we need for our folks, highly important piece of equipment that we've gone without for several years. This gives us a very good professional looking mobile command unit that we'll be able to take out on major scenes. whether those be criminal investigations, fire investigations, as well as the many public events that we have throughout the year that gives us a footprint in those events and allows us to be very visible to the public. That if you're at a 4th of July celebration event somewhere in downtown Prescott and you need our help, you'll see us and you'll be able to come to us. So there's a lot of uses that we'll get out of having this particular vehicle for us. And we're just really excited. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have today.
Councilman Montoya.
Deputy Chief Brambilla, thank you for that. And I think Chief Bonnie also answered some of my questions via email. I will say I really appreciate it being able to actually physically see the space. And I think, Chief Bonnie was talking about the idea that you guys are having to huddle behind the hood of a Crown Vic while you're doing an investigation to protect yourself from wind or weather. It's nice to know that the people who are serving our community are getting a step up in that support capacity. I also thought that the design of this, it actually looks nicer than what you guys were borrowing to me. And it's got more capacity and capability. Is that correct?
Yes, the one that you saw that day is an F650 chassis with about a 22-foot box of basically the area that you were able to come inside. We're able to do a 26-foot, so I believe that gives us 5 workstations for employees to work and a conference room in the back, as well as a bathroom, a small galley kitchen, some television monitors, heating and cooling, all the things that we need to keep our people warm in the winter and cooled off in the summer as well.
Another question I have for you is, when we approve this contract, how long will it be before this actually is, because a lot of these contracts that we've been approving over time, you probably were here when we approved the ladder truck, and we won't see that for 2 years. Right. So I'm curious what the timeline is for this.
It becomes tricky, obviously, with supply of these particular, like the chassis of this, which is an F650. They're tough to come by. The company that we chose actually already has one, so that eliminates some of the time. So by the time we sign everything, get the chassis in their hands, and they start the build, they've told me approximately 8 to 9 months of actual build time. So we're hoping to get it within that time frame.
Okay, that's good to know. And then I think I mentioned this to Chief Bonnie too, but I think it would be a great opportunity to really get it out in the community and do everything to kind of publicize it so people kind of know about it. And I think this is one of the easier purchases that we've done in terms of utilizing ARPA money. So I think it's good that we kind of communicate, hey, we use federal tax dollars to make this happen for the community. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for that point, that the funding mechanism for this does come from the relief funding, and I give credit to Mark Woodfill for bringing that to our attention, and you all for making that a priority for us. So thank you for that as well.
Yeah, I agree with Councilman Montoya. This is an excellent use of those available funds to be able to strengthen and support our police and fire management. When it comes to whether it's just a community event or when, and it'll happen, next time we have a serious emergency control need for command and control, and be able to coordinate responses and a positive resolution to whatever event that is. So I think this is a great opportunity and something that's been needed for a long, long time. Any other comment, any public comment on this?
No, Mayor.
I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move to approve city contract number 2022-171.
Second.
A motion and a second. Please vote.
Passes 7-0.
Thank you very much.
Chief. Okay, we'll move on to item H, 11H.
Approval of RVP 22-003, a revision of plat to extend Idlewild Tract subdivision boundary to combine an unsubdivided parcel with Lot 332 and a portion of Lot 331. Location APNs 111-01-032 and 111-07-005E.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council. Tammy DeWitt, Community Planner with the City of Prescott. Before you is a request for a revision of plat. So we've been talking about lot combinations a lot, talking about the water policy. So we actually have 3 different types of lot combinations, depending on the scenario. In regards to revision of plats, Revision of plats are used if they're increasing the density, like adding in another lot, or if they're extending the boundary of the subdivision. We have the replats that you don't see because those are just lot combinations with parcels that are existing within a subdivision, and they just want to combine the two parcels into one lot. Then the third one would be a record of survey, and those are for unsubdivided lands that are not in a platted subdivision, that are meets and bounds parcels, they want to combine them, and that's also an administrative process. So this one, they're extending the boundary of the Idlewild Tract subdivision to add a parcel outside the subdivision with a lot within the subdivision. So here we have the lots. We have lot 331 and 332, which are in the Idlewild Tract. Then we have this parcel here that is also owned by the same property owner that is not within that subdivision in the meets and bounds area. So what they want to do is they're wanting to combine the two parcels. So in order to do that, we have to extend the boundary of the Idlewild subdivision tract to include this with this parcel. So that's a revision of plat to extend the boundary of the subdivision. And these are a legislative act that has to be approved by the city council. So this one, the parcel within has a single family residence on it, and the parcel they want to combine it with is a vacant piece of property that has some site condition issues, as well as this one with boulders and rocks that we're used to here in Prescott. So they're wanting to combine these two parcels to create one lot to be used as one. And here's the plat map that was provided to you in your packet. So basically, they're getting rid of this lot line officially. They may have combined it through the assessor's office with a form that they have to combine lots, but those are for taxing issues to have one tax bill, but it doesn't get rid of those lot lines. So in order to get rid of all these lot lines, they have to do the revision of plat rather than just doing a lot combination through the county assessor's office. So this plat would get rid of this lot line and get rid of this lot line, and this would all become one parcel or lot. And that concludes my presentation. I'm free to answer any questions.
Well, I know we're kind of cleaning up some very, very old lots out there. And when was that area originally platted?
Like 1920 or something, or 60s? 1919, thank you.
1919.
Okay, 1909.
All right,
A long time
you
ago.
want to try again? It keeps getting back to a prior century. So I think some of the criteria were a little more flexible and loose at that time. Any comments from the council? Any concerns? Any public comments?
No, Mayor.
All right, I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move to approve RVP 22-003.
Second. Motion is second. Please vote.
Passes 7-0.
Thank you, Tammy. All right, moving on to item 11I.
Approval of PLN 21-004, a revised preliminary plat of Hidden Hills Subdivision, Phases 2 and 3, site zoning, single family 18, property owner JCI Investments LC, location APNs 106-04-001L and 106-04-001N.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a request to revise a preliminary plat. It's a little complicated, just slightly more than Nate's description of his issue. Actually, it's pretty straightforward. The subdivision had a preliminary plat for Hidden Hills that came before you and was approved some time ago. That preliminary plat had two phases that totaled 151 lots. The request before you today is to take phase 2 of that subdivision, divide it into two phases, so there will now be phase 2 and 3, where phase 2 used to be, and to add 20 additional lots to those two phases scattered around between the two of them. And I'll show you a few pictures that'll make it a little bit clearer. Phase 1 is not affected at all by this revision, and in fact, a final plat of phase 1 will likely be before you in the very near future, perhaps even your next meeting. General location, this is north of Pioneer Park. It's west of Pinyon Oak Subdivision. I think we're very familiar with the area, having looked at it several times in the past through preliminary platting. Just a visual to give you an idea of where it is in relation to Pinyon Oaks. The airport's in the upper part of the right-hand section of the screen, and Pioneer Parkway is the roadway that runs through. Let's see if I can show this with the mouse. Here we go. Through right here. Just to give you a quick rundown, Phase 1 is shown in yellow. The lots in yellow are not being affected by the proposed change. The original Phase 2 that you've approved already as a preliminary plat are the blue lots. And something to point out, because I'm going to talk about it a little bit more in just a moment, the original plat showed a small roadway here as an emergency egress into the county heading westward. The open space for the subdivision totals 33.8% for the overall subdivision, mostly because of all of the green areas you see in the south portion of the property that are left as open and mostly natural spaces between the areas where the streets will be constructed. The proposed changes, again, none of Phase 1 is affected by this, but the proposed changes add an additional cul-de-sac down here and reapportion the lots somewhat, mixing the additional 20 lots into basically these areas. This proposes to remove the emergency access that ran out into the county, and I'm going to go backwards in just a moment to show you the reason that was explained to us for that removal. I will point out that in the process of adding 20 lots, we went from 33.8% open space to 34% open space by a reduction in some of the lot sizes. So there's more open space, but there's also more lots. A little unusual to have that happen during a planning process. The emergency egress that was to exit into the county to the west crosses some fairly significant terrain. Much of the reach of that roadway would have very steep shoulders, very narrow roadway, and up to 20+% grades in certain areas. 20% grades are not safe, and our fire department rarely uses 20% grades as any kind of a criteria for access, especially in emergency access. That egress would also function more likely for the county subdivision to the west to evacuate through Hidden Hills rather than Hidden Hills evacuating into them, because our fire season, our fire dangers tend to come from the west and southwest. So the proposal is to sprinkler every home in the subdivision and to eliminate that emergency egress because it is not practical based on the steepness of the terrain that they would have to build the roadway through. So those 20% slopes cannot be mitigated enough, and it would require a great deal of grading into properties that are already platted and graded in the county within the county subdivision. The roadway that's proposed to run north from Pioneer Parkway through the subdivision as a future right-of-way that eventually would provide a potential access to the north is something that is a future design. Initially, it will simply be reserved for future roadways. There is nothing to connect it to the north at the moment. That property is James Deepwell Ranch. It is not part of the master plan for the subdivision, and there is no development proposed on it at any point in the future that we're aware of in conversation with the developers. The roadway, it shows better on this one, I apologize, so I've backed up a little. That roadway would be a future connection to a generalized transportation plan that was laid out as part of the master plan, but it's not within the master plan boundaries. The property to the east of this location, directly north of Pinyon Oaks, is state trust lands. So that property is not part of the master plan either. There's no plan to make the connection. At some point in the future, there will be perhaps a need for it, but we don't see it in the near term being an issue. There were some concerns about that northeast corner of Hidden Hills, the Phase 1 portions of it. Again, just above where the green open space designation is because that's where the roadway would be, and that's also where the one engine inoperative takeoff, the OEI pathway from the airport crosses Hidden Hills. It's a very small piece of it. And in fact, I apologize, I covered it up with this, but there is an enormous hole in the ground here called a detention pond, sorry. For a planner, it's an enormous hole in the ground. It's going to be an excavation that actually occupies much of that Phase 1 piece that's within that OEI. So nothing will be constructed within that drainage facility that would affect the OEI. And the developer has agreed that for the one lot that's affected by it here, that the construction of the home will be further south. And there's a larger lot here that takes access from this cul-de-sac, and that construction will also stay out of the OEI. And I have the map. I have to apologize. It's slightly turned, so this is Hidden Hills Subdivision. And you can see where the OEI crosses just a thin swath across the tops of those two lots. Both of those lots are in Phase 1. So neither are affected by what's proposed today. And it is something that we've already agreed to through design of the subdivision and with the developer that there will be no construction within those areas. So we've taken care of the concern about the OEI, and we've also looked at the emergency egress because of the inability to create something that provides a safe egress out. There is a water service agreement associated with this because of the additional 20 units, and I think Gwen is here to talk about that if you want to head into that. I think prior to that, perhaps, if you want to ask some questions about this, I'm happy to answer. We do have a representative from the developer here as well, and I'd be happy to try and answer any questions that come up on this, and we'll move right on to the water service agreement.
George, this water is coming from the deep well contract, though, right?
We're going to move forward to the water service agreement.
Councilman Shishka, Gwen Rowich with Public Works. Yes, Hidden Hills is within the boundary of the Deep Well Ranch pre-annexation development agreement. So the water for this project will come from the Deep Well contract.
Okay, so we're not saying add 20 acre feet or whatever onto that. We're saying this is already spoken for.
They've already platted 718 lots in the Deep Well contract, so this will increase it by 20 lots to 738 lots within the Deep Well contract.
Okay.
It's essentially an additional 3.4 acre feet of water in addition to what was approved in August of 2021 for the first 151 lots. So in total, it will be 29.07 acre feet of water.
But this is already within the worm.
It is.
Okay.
It's in the committed and the projected portion of the worm, yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Rusing.
Thank you. I'd like to thank Community Development for including the airport map overlay on this project, demonstrating the one-engine impact display, and the fact that the developer, has he put that in writing, that he's not going to put any houses in that area?
He hasn't put it in writing directly, but the plat itself shows the detention basin where the display is located, so no houses can go in the detention basin. So he's designed his subdivision to accommodate that restriction.
Okay. Well, I'm glad to see that Community Development is and the airport are working together concerning preventing encroachment on the airport. My other question is about the slope on the west end. Mm-hmm. I guess it was too much of a grade to put in a secondary fire access, but isn't that where he's going to be putting houses?
The houses
on that slope?
The slope is actually outside of the subdivision. Let me go back one more. I'm sorry. So this is what the proposed subdivision revised plat would look like. This one shows better the
See the
topography.
contour lines on the left.
See, these contour lines represent slope. Most of the issue is in here,
Okay.
but there's some additional as you go further into the subdivision where there are some already existing roadways in the subdivision that are kind of improved roadways that have similar slopes. So there's a section that involves a whole series of different lots. It involves some road right-of-way in the county, and it involves some road easement, which is this section, also in the county, that are very steep slopes. The closer the lines are together, the steeper the slope, and you can see this is not just a steep slope, it's a cross slope, which makes for difficult construction for roadways. The fire department is a reviewer, as are a number of other departments, on any preliminary plat and revision of plat, and they have agreed that the sprinklering of all of the homes in the subdivision is an adequate safeguard in relation to a poorly designed and constructed emergency egress as an alternative.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Moore?
I was just wondering two things. Could you show me where the boundaries of the city are, the city limits with this project?
Go back to the actual subdivision. So the city limit lines, actually, that's the city limit line.
Okay.
And then it comes down here.
Okay.
And then it jogs westward
Okay.
to incorporate a subdivision a little bit further to the west.
And does this
is all county here, and then it's county directly above.
Okay. And does this area require aggregation easement because of its proximity to the airport or not?
Part of it will require aggregation easements, but not the entire subdivision. Generally, when that happens, we request it cover the entire subdivision.
And that's been addressed.
Yes.
Any other questions? Well, I know Phase 1 is being proposed for not sprinklering because it has less than 30 units. Is that correct?
I believe based on this that they may be required to sprinkler all of them. Do you have an answer? So Phase 1 will not require?
The far cul-de-sac is not required.
Okay. So this first cul-de-sac will not require sprinklers? And all of the rest of the subdivision requires sprinklers because of the effectively being a very long cul-de-sac.
Well, yeah, you have a lot of houses there that are going to be forced into one entrance and exit. I know when I first saw this plat, I was a little concerned at that time, but at least it had an emergency egress. Now, I've walked that road up there, and I don't see it as being particularly difficult slope-wise to be able to build a sufficient a road for emergency egress. I know originally the area right below the power lines and within that curve of that last section over here was originally proposed of having RV parking. So that's been eliminated, is that correct?
Since we try to record all of this, I don't want to be the middleman.
Vic Chapman, Chamberlain Development. That's correct. There's no RV accommodation in there. There are within the homes themselves. The lots are wide enough, and Dorn Homes will be offering RV garages on some of those lots.
Which ones?
They're spread out.
I have a question. How much does it cost to sprinkle a home?
I'm being told $5,000
per unit?
home.
I find it kind of interesting that the first phase that will be marketed and sold will not have sprinklers because they don't have to, but the rest of the development will. So that's a little confusing for me as far as potential home buyer. And future home buyers in the phases 2 and 3 being required to have sprinklers, and the first phase doesn't have to.
There's a code or something that we have gotten from the city that tells
Right,
us.
it says if it's less than 30 units, then you don't have to have the sprinklering. I don't know, for me, it's disturbing that you have this high density and number of homes and vehicles that are going to all be crowded into trying to get out of that one access road into Commerce Drive.
I thought we had a city code that said at least there should be an emergency fire exit for these subdivisions. Don't we have that code that requires a minimum, doesn't even have to be paved, just a dirt road?
It's a strong encouragement, but each subdivision is reviewed independently. It's not an automatic. If there are other opportunities or there are impediments to creating those things, then the alternatives are the sprinkler systems for each home.
So we have no road and some houses with no sprinklers.
I mean, the function of sprinklering is to slow down the potential fire risk. So it allows the residents enough time to be able to evacuate. And you've got such a high amount of homes in those far western areas that'll have to make a very long, congested exit through that one road to be able to get out of the Commerce Drive entrance. And plus, with the replatting, we're adding another 20 units in that general risk area.
If you look at what's been happening in Texas, you know, the 45,000 acres that's been burning down small towns. It started with a barbecue pit. And then with the wind, you know, it's out on the flats, and this area is kind of out in the similar grass areas. You know, it wouldn't be unusual to try maybe have 3 or 4 fire units out there on this one road with people trying to get out, and part of it's not sprinkled. I just think that we need to use a little common sense and just say, you know, you've got to provide a second access. You know, I mean, let's just use common sense and not create more problems.
Mayor Pro Tem, we have followed the codes and ordinances that are on the books for this development as it relates to the density. The southern half is 160 acres, and there's approximately 165 homes there. So the density is not great. That's nearly 1 per acre.
But I'm just talking about this plat, and it looks like a recipe for disaster, having that one road in and out for both evacuations and for the fire units. You know, you're not just going to have one engine in there.
Councilman Moore? I guess it was Councilman Tenney who's first there.
I had mine on, I canceled it, but I do have a question, if you don't mind, Mayor. Thank you. Vic, I guess these are all freestanding homes. They're not connected, right?
Right, that's correct.
If we were to have a catastrophic fire event, like a fire swept through that area, and the sprinkler systems were to be activated in the homes, could there be enough water supply for all of the homes' sprinkler systems to work? I guess I don't know how to express it from a engineering standpoint, but I mean, imagine that many homes that close together, and the need for all their fire sprinkler systems to be activated because of this fire. Could there be sufficient water to make that effective?
We have the major water line that runs down the south end of the property that belongs to the city, and we're tying into 2 locations. And that's part of the design, the water calculations that the engineer does.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
How many fire hydrants are required? Do we have a code that says they have to be a certain amount of?
6 or 7 are going to be required in here. I apologize. I had a map that actually showed the locations on them, and I did not include it in the presentation.
We're putting in what's
6 or 7.
required.
Mm-hmm. So like how many linear feet between fire hydrants? Is there a city code requiring that?
For residential, the standard's generally 500 feet between.
Councilman Tenney.
So there have been a lot of good questions asked about fire safety here. Just to clarify, our fire department has reviewed this.
That's correct.
And approved it.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any further questions or concerns? We have any public comment?
No, Mayor.
All right, I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move to approve PLN 21-004.
Second.
Have a motion and a second, please vote.
Passes 4-3.
Mayor, we do have the water service agreement next, and I'm going to let Wynn step in and talk about that.
Water service application number WSA 21-017, submitted by Chamberlain Development Prescott LLC on behalf of property owner JCI Investments LLC. Location APN 106-04-001N, south half, and APN 106-04-001L, north half, together comprising approximately 322 acres. Property is in the north one half section for Township 14N, R02W, GSRBM, and M.
I believe I've already reviewed the water portion of this. However, I will add that it went to the Water Issues Subcommittee in early March, and it was voted unanimously to approve the water for the additional 20 lots for the Hidden Hills revised preliminary plat. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have about the water that's being requested for the plat.
Okay.
I didn't want to be redundant. I
Pro Tem,
I already gave them the skinny, but I can do it again if you want me to.
I'll make a comment. I approve the water for it because I was under the impression that it was already approved, it was already available, and I wasn't aware of all the issues with access and the sprinkler issue. So I just wanted to make that comment.
All right, any other further concerns or comments? Any public comment?
No, Mayor.
All right, so I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move that we approve water service application number WSA 21-017.
Second.
I have a motion and a second, please vote.
Passes 5-2.
All right, moving on to 11K.
Public hearing for Annex 21-005, a request to annex 4 existing developed lots comprising 2.05 acres. Location APN 107-09-006A, 107-09-006B, 107-09-006D, and 107-09-006A. Addresses 1601, 1611, 1616, and 1621 Cathedral Pines Drive. Owners Haringa, Beaver, Amen Family Trust, and Welch. Applicant Samuel Haringa.
Mayor, this is a request for annexation of 4 individual single-family lots. They're already developed lots. They're adjacent to the city. Sorry, skip over that. They're adjacent to the city at the very, very south end of town. These lots are in sort of a box shape. There are city limit lines and city lots immediately to the east, and there are city lots immediately to the north. And these 4 property owners have requested to have their properties annexed into the city in order to allow for an application for water service under the city of Prescott's water system. The water system is in the immediate area adjacent to this, and an extension of the water to these lots is a simple process. This is one of the very unusual circumstances where a subdivision or an annexation this small actually meets the requirements of state law. You need a minimum of 300 foot of frontage on the city limits. You can't be more than twice as deep as you are wide, and there are a couple of other requirements, and they meet all of those requirements. It is something that we don't see very often. Normally it's a larger area or it's a single parcel that's proposing to annex in. A little bit closer look, just to give you an idea of where the roadway is. This is a private roadway that runs down this way, through here, and back up and connects back into city public streets at this end and at this end. So private drive. The area is bounded to the south by the National Forest and on the west by a very large lot subdivision in the county. That is an area where perhaps fire safety is a concern as well, and having these lots connected to the city water system and having the system extended to connect to them could benefit the city by providing an additional fire hydrant or so in the area. Just a quick look at the area. There are existing homes on each of the lots, so we're talking about an existing subdivision. There should be little or no impact on the city services because they're already adjacent to the city. We are probably the first responders for police and fire calls anyway, and that would not change with the annexation.
Went in, they were hooked up to city sewer.
They were. City policy has come and gone with connection to water and sewer systems, and at the time that these houses were constructed, sewer was available to at least the northeast house. I'm not positive that, this house or this house are connected to the system, but it is available right here, as well as the water available right here, and then again, sewer is available up here. So it is rather unusual to have that circumstance immediately adjacent to the city limits. Often it's a single parcel that just happens to front a main that it's existed for a long time. I think that was discussed pretty clearly by Gwen earlier during the water discussion, during your study session, that those types of things can generate a requirement for an annexation in order to get water, but rarely do you actually have the dimensional requirements of statute met by those circumstances, and this happens to be one of those cases.
And these homes are currently on a well that's failing, so it's...
Leave all various reasons.
So they each have a well?
Councilman Moore.
Thank you. Could you go back a slide? I just was wondering, why wasn't this incorporated in the city beginning, like these little jogs and the one above it? Is there any consideration for the one above it that they want to also be annexed in so that the boundaries are more linear?
That's a very good question.
Why are these pockets?
Two of these folks have contacted me after getting the notice about this, wanting to know if they qualify, and they perhaps do. I haven't done all of the evaluation that's based on state law requirements.
I was just wondering how the city boundaries got to be to this in the beginning.
I don't know why the boundaries were like that. As old as I am, that actually predates me.
Wow. Thank you.
Prehistoric.
Are the applicants here?
1919.
George.
Councilman Montoya.
George, I had a question about, you mentioned the wells. Are they going to retire their wells when they hook up to the city?
It is a requirement of the water policy to do that, to connect onto.
That's what I assumed. I just want to make sure I understood that correctly.
Yes.
Thank you.
So part of your job when an annexation occurs is to designate the initial zoning for the property. In most cases, when we annex property, there's a rezoning required. In this case, there is no rezoning requested because the county zoning is all that's required. So that's something that's done at the time of the motions being made.
Yeah, I think all in all, this is a pretty good example of how best to be able to annex property into the city, be able to provide city services, be able to create more protection by extending that water service so that the residents there will more likely be able to have fire and police protection as needed. And I think it fits right into what we were hoping to accomplish with our revised water policy as well. So I think all things considered, this is a good example of how best to be able to consider annexations and be able to provide city services and essential public services. As
Are the applicants here?
I think Sam is here.
Do they want to say something?
No, I appreciate all the efforts on the part of the city planning, and also your contact was beneficial, Susie, as well as Mayor Good. He's been in contact several times, and we certainly hope that by being part of the city, which we have been all along anyway, that now it becomes official. Right. And, one correction, the house directly across from mine, in the up there.
This
right?
one?
That one already is connected to the city sewer and water.
Oh, I didn't realize that was on
And
water.
the other three of us all have wells.
Interesting. Welcome to Prescott.
Kind of an odd
Can you
condition.
indulge me for a moment? Mr. Haranga, I know, was a principal at the Blake School in Parker, Arizona, I think 100 years ago when I lived out there, and I had an ex-relation who was teaching out there. And I think you also made a rather crazy decision to serve as an elected official on the town council of Parker. Were you the mayor or just a council member?
No, I served as a council member, and then they elected me, since it was an internal thing, served as mayor. And as soon as I saw your name, I commented.
Well, it's good to see you again, and congratulations on making it up to, I'm guessing, about 5,800 feet instead of sea level.
Right. And prior to that, I lived in Coolidge. I also served on the council there.
Okay.
Oh.
Keep an eye out, folks.
All right.
You should also mention, since Kathy mentioned that it was the 20th anniversary of the Indian Springs fire, that our house, which is the kind of white roofed one there, was originally burned down in that fire.
Wow.
So it's a happy anniversary.
Wow.
Welcome to Prescott.
Wow.
All things considered, I think this is a very laudable and appropriate motion and annexation for not only the residents, but for the surrounding city residents as well. All right, any other questions or comments? No, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to close the public hearing. Second.
A vote in a second, please vote.
Passes 7-0.
I move to approve annexation ANX 21-005 and establish the zoning as single-family SF-12.
Second.
A motion and a second, please vote.
Passes 7-0.
There you go. Thank you very much. I think this concludes our voting session. I do have a couple of comments. I like to close the meeting with some type of a quote, but I think today, sometimes as we deliberate some of our issues here and we compare them to what's happening throughout the world, the amazing leadership and the commitment to fighting for freedom in Ukraine make some of our local concerns pale in comparison. I've always been a big fan of Winston Churchill. I have a couple of his extensive biographies in my home library, and I just felt that President Zelensky is speaking for so many oppressed people, and the courage and the commitment that he's been able to generate within his country and throughout the world, quite frankly, reminds me a lot of Winston Churchill's ability to defend against the Nazi onslaught during World War II. So this tie was the closest I could get to a Ukrainian color. I wore it specifically for that because the more I thought about it, and then I pulled a Courier edition this morning, and here's an editorial cartoon showing Winston Churchill with President Zelensky's face on it. So I just want to say that I salute President Zelensky and all of the Ukrainians that are fighting so diligently and so courageously against the Russian war machine. And we pray that they succeed. So with that, I'll adjourn this meeting.